This is a special edition of Late Night Health. I'm Mark Alyn. A couple of weeks ago, I had the pleasure of meeting our guest, Penelope Jean Hayes. She's written a book along with Carole Serene Borgens, who is a channeler, called Do Unto Earth. They also have, I'm going to hold the book up. We'll have this up throughout the interview so that you can see the book. And they've written two other books, The Likely Future and I guess volume 1 and volume 2. We'll get that there and we'll show you that. We'll have we have a website going so that you can find the book and learn more about Penelope and Carole. You working with a channeler and your background as a journalist, as a journalist, we study, we report, we research, but how do you research a channeler? How do you do that?
The process of it. So I had met Carole prior to us having any idea that we would write books together. And I was already somebody who was very open-minded. So as a spiritualist, this is for me not really that far out of the realm of those tools that I tap into. So I had gone to Carole actually for some spirit channeling sessions about my next book, which at that time was titled Do Unto Earth. I did not know at that time it would be this book that we would end up doing together. But I had some questions to, who would publish this book, these sort of things, and was just looking for a peace of mind that it would indeed get published. And so I had already known Carole. And then she contacted me some months later and said that Pax, we'll get to that, but this is the name of the spirit entity that she channels, wanted to contact me. And I was working on, so Do Unto Earth, as the name would suggest, I was working on environmental issues and planetary repair and ecosystem repair. And so Carole and Pax contacted me to provide information for my Viral Energy Institute. So I founded an institute which deals with these things as well as personal and interpersonal communication and a lot of different topics like that. So they wanted to lend support and wisdom to that project. And that kind of went off into this book. So we started the process of me asking questions and Carole channeling the answers of Pax on October 2nd of last year. And I very quickly realized, I think this sounds like the book that I was going to be writing, Do Unto Earth. And then I asked the question, is this meant to be that book? So for me, to answer your question, it was a process of, first of all, I was very open to these things, but the other side of me is very pragmatic and analytical. And, I wasn't necessarily, at first it was, well, let's see, what the spirit has to say. We'll see if I believe it. And so over time, I absolutely, it was proven time and time and time again that not only could you not make this stuff up. I mean, I couldn't in my wildest dreams make this stuff up or imagine anybody who could, but a lot of these things have come to fruition in the news. And, history has been part of that proof now.
The subtitle of the book is also interesting. It's not too late.
Yes.
And I guess to me what that means is we can save the earth, but if we don't, we have a limited time and life is going to end. Is that basically the message of the book?
Well, for humans on this planet, the planet will go on. This is all according to Pax. So according to Pax and the information in this book, Pax says that we have 8 to 12 years left before a fail-safe point is reached for the wellness of our planet. And a fail-safe point doesn't mean that it's the end of the world in that time frame. It means that after that, if things don't change, if this trajectory doesn't change, then in that time frame, it will be indeed too late. So you do get to that tipping point where you can't repair, look at all the plastic in the ocean for just one topic. So it does come to a point, and that point is very soon. And that's why this spirit entity, and I would like to address exactly who Pax is, but that is why we've been contacted at this time, because it's critical.
Well, and the reason I asked to have you back and so that we could spend more time together, I'd like to think that I'm open, but also I have this pragmatic side as well, just like you.
I'm glad you do. We should.
And, my LinkedIn description says nosiest person in the world. I ask people questions like, you've got a big rock on your left hand. Okay. I want to know what you had for dinner last night, what you're making tonight. Um, so let me, your family, and maybe I'm channeling right now because I've always said that I'm here and I don't know what questions I'm going to ask. So when you said to your family, I'm writing a book about, a channeler, and your mom said, huh? Your dad said, huh? Other family, husband, boyfriend, whatever, said, what? What was their reaction?
Yeah, Mark, you are good. You really are good. And nobody's asked me this yet. No, they're non-supportive of this project. My family are very Catholic. My mom and dad go to church every day, so they are very Catholic. That being said, it was actually my father who opened me up to spirituality at a very young age. So my father had had a near-death experience. He is asthmatic and he died in the hospital. This was before I was born. They brought him back. Well, he didn't tell anyone about that other than my mother. It was not accepted in those days. And then when I was 15, I ran away from home. We had a series of moves. It was just the strangest thing. One thing led to the other. And I find a lot of people actually relate to this, lo and behold. But I was out of the house and then back in and out of the house and back in. And one of those times I was back in the house, my dad sat me down and said, I want to tell you this thing that happened to me. And so he told me his near-death experience. And for me, it was that moment that opened up my mind to more than the religion that I was taught and I was raised with. So it was very eye-opening for me. And he had been reading a lot of books that were very spiritual, metaphysical even. Dr. Deepak Chopra, he had a library full of books like this and books on near-death experiences. So on my way out the door again the next time with my garbage bag full of stuff, I grabbed a few books from my dad's library. And this is how it all began for me. So his journey was, in the years after that, he went back to the Catholic Church, became very involved in the church, and left behind the spirituality and kind of denies that side of him now. It's, very, it's a very particular path for him. So when I told them, and this was actually a moment, it was my birthday last year. And so we started writing this book October 2nd, as I said, and my birthday is October 23rd. And my parents actually were in town visiting. And I told them, oh, it's so exciting, this information. I met this lady, she's a channeler, and we're writing this book on environmental healing. And you just won't believe the things that are coming through, the solution to interstellar travel at light speed. So we're talking about a replacement to crude oil, which is so important.
Absolutely. We need to do
Yes.
that. We're talking about, we're on late night health radio, and we often talk about the environment because if we don't take care of our planet,
they're interconnected.
They are absolutely interconnected with our own personal health.
So my parents thought the devil was deceiving me. And so I continued writing. That was hurtful, I'll be honest. But, everybody's where they are in their journey. And I've just continued my journey. And I'm very grounded in that now. I would not have been a number of decades ago. But now I know that I have a mission and I have a plan and my life has a purpose. And that's different to what their purpose is. And so I have come to a place where I'm absolutely okay with that. And I would not have been able to say that 5 or 10 years ago. So it's all good.
Our guest is Penelope Jean Hayes. She's the author of Do Unto Earth, It's Not Too Late. And I guess your specialty over the years has been about the environment. So are we impacted right now with the environment? We've had in the last 4 years major legislation protecting the planet, protecting children, protecting people has been overturned. Do we or do we not have an issue where we need to maintain clean water, clean air, clean earth.
Of course we do. This is one of those common sense things. So when I look at, politics is a very touchy subject. So I will say that it hurts my heart to, struggle with trying to make improvements in this way and open people's minds, and then have things like what you're saying. And so for me in particular, I care very deeply for the animals of this planet. And there has also been a lot of legislation to overturn, which makes things much more difficult for the suffering of animals in slaughterhouses. And a lot of people don't know that because it's not something we want to talk about. So it's very difficult for me, but I've come to a place also with this that I realize that we, the consumer, will be the ones that change the environment and our outcomes. So, we have this administration for the next, so long, and then there's another one for 4 years. These are very short-term things in the greater scheme of things. So we have to look that every time we buy something, that consumer dollar is our vote, and that's where our power lies. And I'd really like to encourage people to realize what power that they have, because it's tremendous. So, what do you support? Every time you buy something, you're making that vote. And I think that when people rise up and raise our consciousness collectively as a population, you start within your own family, your own community, that higher consciousness is really what's going to make the changes. It will never come from politics and government leaders. And we have to stop putting so much, they don't get that. They don't get that from us anymore. We have to stop putting so much power in their hands, because that's not where the changes will be made. When people start saying, like, I don't accept this anymore, let's make plastic. I mean, PAX gives us the solution in Do Unto Earth for plastic. The replacement is actually hemp cellulose. Everything that we make out of plastic, we can make from hemp cellulose. This one thing, that's $1 billion idea. So it changes absolutely everything. So if each one of us said, you know what, I'm not buying plastic anymore. And that's what we did in our household. We don't have anything plastic. So we had to get rid of all the Tupperware. You think about the things that are made out of plastic.
Absolutely.
Well, this microphone is too. So, you can't, there's some things that just aren't available yet, but you do your best. And if we all did that, we will change what products they make and how they make it. We have the power.
And I think that's really an important statement. And then let's go back now to what I find fascinating, and that is Pax, him, herself.
Yeah.
Right? Pax, I personally have never encountered something like that. Mm-hmm. And I want to, okay? I want to, I'd love to hang out. Hey, Pax, you want to go bowling? Mm-hmm. That's would be something that would be of interest to me. Mm-hmm. When you're talking through Carole to Pax, do you ever ask, hey, am I going to win the lottery? Do you ever ask personal questions?
Well, no, not as that suggested question would be. And no, I have never asked personal questions. So when I first met Carole, it was to go to her as a channel. And I did at that time ask personal questions. But interestingly enough, they were all on mission. I have a very distinct life purpose that I'm keenly aware of. And I do try to make every decision based on that. Is this on purpose? And so my questions have always been for, that greater purpose. So no, and actually it hasn't even been a curiosity of mine, but I've had so many other curiosities. Like yourself, I am an inquisitive person. And as Pax said in the book, there'll be no end to my questions. I'm like that little kid that's always asking the parent, what about this? What about that? That's me. So I wanted to know, how were the Great Pyramids built? And this is all in Do Unto Earth. How did the stones at Stonehenge get moved? What about aliens? What about Roswell in 1947? What happened to Amelia Earhart in 1937? And so those are my questions, as well as environmental repair, of course. And we find out that they're all interconnected. And at one point, Pax says to me, okay, I can see that to get my message delivered to your population, your Earth population, it will come through your curiosities. And so this book, it reads like a movie. It's so tremendously interesting. It's not a boring book about the environment at all, is what it comes down to. And Pax knew that.
if you when you do the film, I'm not, I'm available.
Yes. Well, you do have such a great voice. We're going to have to work you in for sure.
Got it. I could be the narrator.
Yes. Well, hey,
Hey,
no, we're on to something here. I like it. We have been envisioning the movie. I really do think it reads like a movie. And if you can get 10 pages, you read the first 10 pages, you can't put this book down. It really is that good. It really is.
when and you can say that too because you've written the narrative, but I guess the meat is not yours. It's Pax.
Yeah, so it's difficult to be braggadocious on ourselves, right? And I rarely do that for my other books that I also love so much. But you're right, it's very liberating when the answers are not mine. Mine are the questions, mine are the curiosities. And this subject matter because it was something I was working on. But the answers are not mine. So when the answers were coming back, I mean, I call it jaw dropping. I would get the returned answers to my questions, and I was literally my jaw was on the floor. I'm like, this is unbelievable. So every day it was like, you're like doing this, like turning the pages of a book. That was me through this experience. So I can absolutely say it's really that good.
You've opened up a whole can of worms from
Hmm.
Amelia Earhart, which I'm fascinated with, to the
Yes.
pyramids.
Yes.
I made a comment to a friend of mine that aliens came down and helped build the pyramids. Okay,
Hmm.
I don't know if I'm accurate or not,
You
but
are?
it's to me, I am. Okay,
Yes.
see,
Yes. I
and
know. Yes. And to go a step further, aliens are our relatives. They are indeed, PAX calls them OPAs, other planetary ancestors. So that is a can of worms. So I'm not sure we'll go down there because if we had a couple of hours, we'll go wherever you want to go, Mark. But these pyramids were built from aliens, extraterrestrials coming to help out the people of the time. And it wasn't just that incident of the pyramids. This can be documented and is actually recorded in early artwork. So a lot of these things, for those who study the artwork, they already know these stories and they are documented that way. But they moved the stones of the pyramids and built them through teleportation. We were told by Pax. And so I'm thinking, Star Trek teleportation. So I dig into, well, how and like what instrumentation did they have? And I'm thinking Star Trek. And Pax says that teleportation is a thought process. No instruments or tools are needed. It's all thought power.
wow, you have to have a brain to do that. And if you're working radio and TV like I do, you may not be able to teleport. It just the way
But
it.
you look at it on a small scale, we know that our mind can achieve a lot of things. You can get a cold because you're just down and stressed out, or you can, rally also. So we know it on a very small scale how the mind has an effect over physical reality. So in that case, the physical reality of your body. So this is that on a very practiced large scale.
And the fact is that thoughts are things. They're
Yes.
right.
Well, yes. I mean, if you study metaphysics and actually quantum physics, you do know that a thought is an energy formation, and it is, in actual fact, a thing. It does have a formation, it's an energy. So that's a fact.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
Exactly. Uh, let's talk about uh, COVID because you've covered that quite a bit with PAX, and I think that's on almost everybody's mind. Um,
Mhm.
Someplace here, about 30 masks that I rotate through when I go out. I try not to go out a lot. My kids yell at me if I go out, um, and it's just hard. I don't want somebody. It's hard to have, for example, groceries delivered
Yep.
because I don't want somebody else picking through my tomatoes. They won't pick them the way I would or my wife would or whatever.
Yep.
They'll pick thick asparagus. I want thin, all that kind of stuff. But there's also depression, I think, has
Mhm.
really gone rampant
Mhm.
with COVID. I call it COVID depression. Does PAX talk
Absolutely.
about that at all?
He doesn't address depression. What actually happened so what you're referring to are these two mini books. So it's The Likely Future and volume 1 and volume 2. And what happened was, while we were writing Do Unto Earth, PAX, I like to say, interrupted our regular broadcast to bring us news about coronavirus. And that's exactly what happened. So to us, it all happened in a short period of time. And it was like, this is what your population needs to know right now. This is what's so important. And when we got to the end of these books, I said to him, okay, we're going to go to publishing. We're going to go to print. Is there anything else we need to know? And basically, these two books encapsulate the crux of what we need to know, including where to look for a cure, a vaccine, and we'll talk about that. But not every question was asked. So in terms of the question you're asking about depression, I think that we all know it and we feel it on different levels. I really feel very badly for people who live alone.
Yeah.
You know, we have a spouse, but a lot of people live alone, single people and elderly people, and it's truly heartbreaking. And we need to do everything we can to help end this pandemic for everyone's sake.
Absolutely. So there's a cure. There's a way of doing it. And I have to just say that I'm not a vaccine guy, but you probably knew that. Tell me about the vaccine. What will it entail?
Sure. Okay. So I'm going to give you a bunch of information that comes from the books, The Likely Future, because they connect. So the first thing is to know that the virus inserts into the cells of the body something called anemones, ANENOMIES, anemones. These are latent buds. And as a
the anemones in the sea, a sea anemone.
Exactly. See, you're really good. Not too many people would know that word, but that's exactly right. So this is a bud. So it inserts into the cells of the body a bud. Now, it can bloom multiple times, and it will. So when you hear people, these reports around the world right now, starting to hear these reports of people that say that they caught coronavirus for a second time, it's actually not what's happened, that it had never left the body is the truth of what's happening according to PAX. So that it's a rebloom, and then it goes dormant, and then you can test negative in between those blooms. However, you would still be contagious even while testing negative. You look at something like the event at the Rose Garden, everybody tested negative, and then they turn out that, they had been contagious to each other. So you can be negative and still contagious. So we know that as a baseline. And it seems every day we're learning something, new and different about this virus. Well, that brings me to that it's not one virus. So it's not one disease anymore. It started off as one disease, and I could talk to you also about the origins of that, but just to stay on this train right here, it started off as one super coronavirus that was developed in a lab into this Frankenstein-like super virus, so that you took what was natural in nature in bats' coronavirus and made it into something different. Now that something different was accidentally released to the population. As it has spread through the world, it mutates within our bodies. So while it spends time in the body, it mutates. And now there's all these different, so you have some people experience these symptoms, some people, it's almost like different diseases. Well, it is different diseases. So one example of a less volatile strain is when people experience the sensory loss. So the loss of taste and smell, according to PAX, indicates a less volatile strain of the virus that will not attack the lungs. So this is important. Of course, this is nothing you're going to hear in the news. That's in the books, The Likely Future.
Right.
And important to know that PAX says that he's the divine universe and the God being. So I'd like to address that too with your audience, what that source actually is. That was the answer.
And you said before we started recording that PAX is, I guess, godlike?
Yes. So, yes. Well, at first, I didn't know who PAX was.
Talking about too. So
yes. So I had to ask, who exactly are you? Now, Carole, who channels PAX, had been channeling PAX since the 1990s. And interestingly, she had never asked this question. She knew she was speaking with a spirit entity, but didn't ask further. And that's where myself, who's never satisfied, dug in and said, well, I kind of need to know more. I'm going to need to know, who I'm talking to. And so the answer came back, and I actually it's a really quick one. I want to read it to you. I think I probably have it memorized, but I'll read it anyway. We are one with the universe, not the universe alone. We are the divine universe, yes, and the God being and the greater wisdom. that which knows and supports all and is healing, non-judgmental, and tolerant, all seeing, all knowing, and peace. So I was like, oh, so that's who I'm talking to. Yeah, wow.
People, people are, your parents are Catholic. There are people who are Jewish and Muslim and Buddhist and all of these different views. To me,
Mhm.
same kind of, peace and love is the bottom line of almost all religions.
Mhm.
Um, is that what PAX is about? Peace and love?
Yes, and when this is on page 6 of the book, so it comes up immediately, needing to know who Pax is. Then he clarifies further by saying, be very careful with the word God. He describes himself as the God being, and that's actually a different connotation than just God. And he said, be very aware that there are many religions in your world, and some who call their divine one by different names. So he says that's where the name Pax is derived from, because I said, can I have a moniker to call you? Because all of that I just said, I can't say that every time, dear divine universe and God being, it got too long. So I said, can I have a moniker to call you? And he said, we are Pax, and that means peace. So to your point, he made it very clear that I would call his energy God. Me, Penelope, would call his energy God. Someone else might call that energy Allah or Shiva or whatever it is for them. And so these are perspectives. And he wants to make it clear that his message is for everybody. So we started using PAX going forward.
I love it. We only have a couple minutes because you're busy, and I still have a gazillion questions. So maybe we'll do this again in a month or so. I'd love to do that. Um, does PAX, and of course not in the book, but has PAX made any comments about politics? I mean, we're at a
Yes.
breaking point right now with
Mhm.
red and blue, and I didn't have a red and blue shirt, or I would have done both. But we have such a
Mhm.
non-peaceful approach to politics today that bothers me. The last question, we're recording this interview the day after the vice presidential debate, and the last question was asked by an eighth grader who said, "Why are we fighting? We're all Americans, right?
So wise. So
Why?
wise.
Why are we fighting? Shouldn't we? Yeah, we can have different points of view, but." And now I leave it to you and Pax.
We've gone off the rails. We go through these ebbs and flows as a society. And Pax has said that the spirit world, as well as our ancient ancestors, call them ETs, are monitoring us. They're monitoring us for how our civilization is doing. And I said, well, civilization. He said, look at the word civilization. So the derivative of that we're being monitored for how civil we're being. And this is where this intervention has come from. We're not doing so good these days. We need a guiding hand to steer us on the right track. And that's what this information is. And I actually want to make sure that we cover, back to your coronavirus question, because your original question was about the vaccine. PAC says that the vaccine will be found in the polio reduction method. So the drugs that were successful for the one-time disease of polio that is cured, he says to look to the polio drugs for a neurological interrupter. So those drugs that were successful for polio will be developed into the vaccine that will handle all of those strains. And that's where I was going with that, all these strains. So we're looking now, we have vaccines, different companies. Will they cover all of the strains? No, according to PAX. But the polio reduction methods, look to that, and that will cover all of the strains. So that's really important.
I don't know if you knew this. I'm sure Pax does. The two polio vaccines were developed and never patented. Why?
Mm.
So that everybody could get the vaccine at a reasonable rate and not have to spend a lot of money on the vaccine. And
That's
I'm
great.
hoping that happens with the coronavirus vaccine.
I hope so too. That is a good lesson.
It is a good
Hmm.
lesson. Well, the name of the book is Do Unto Earth It's not too late. We've had a picture up throughout. There are two other books, The Likely Future, Volume 1 and 2. And our guest has been Penelope Jean Hayes. She's holding the books up. Thank you. And I invite you back whenever you'd like. Let's do this again. I really appreciate it. Join us at latenighthealth.com. We're going to have a very pretty picture of Penelope up there. We'll have a copy of the book cover as well. We'll have all three of them if I can figure out how to do that. And we appreciate your watching and listening. I'm Mark Alyn. We'll be back very soon. Bye-bye for now.